welcome to Quilt Stories. I'm Lisa Walton, and today I'm very excited to be talking to Rosalie Dace, who is in Durban in South Africa.
And hi to you there in Sydney.
Rosalie is going to talk about a quilt called Here and Now. There it is.
It is hanging behind me. I have it in the house.
Would you like to start off by just telling me about the inspiration, some of your processes, because I loved your end results, but when I see the stages of a quilt like this, I think, what is going through her mind? So I really would like to find out a little bit more about how you come up with something like this.
Yeah, sometimes what goes through one's mind when you're making something like this changes as you go along. But this basically started with a feeling of intense joy about being home. And it was an attempt to respond to that feeling of being joyful and being home.
This is the first picture we have is a far cry from a quilt.
It certainly is. Lisa, that's actually basically, I'm going to say that's the second step. I think for quite a long time before I start a piece, and I usually have in my mind some idea of the color combination along the way, but I then find a range of all of those colors. I put them out on my table, and then I pick up one that kind of excites me most, and I fold them into lumpy bits on the wall in a beginning of a composition, and that's what you saw. It's getting a little more sense of organization. At this stage, I'm looking at the proportion. I have also at this stage got some idea of light, medium, and dark. I think it was Judy Warren Bladen who said to once, you know, value does the work and color gets the credit. And so I'm very conscious of where light and medium and dark are. And you'll see in this that the proportion of some of those pieces have changed. And there's the magic long black strip. I think on that one, that was fabric. I keep long strips of paper or fabric in black, gray, and white, which help me direct the composition. They're always lying around. Sometimes newspaper, because that newspaper print, I can vary the amount of medium in it too.
So we're moving along. Things have moved a little bit more, and I can see the strip and there's little squares of things. So you just fold up the fabric in sort of proportions that you feel like. I can see we're starting to get a little bit of shape.
And you'll see there's the kind of wobbly circle donut shape there. You know, I couldn't think of another way to show myself. I don't want to be caught up in making realistic representations. So I chose the circle as a symbol of myself. It's made of silk. And what I did was piece a couple of strips of different color yellow silk, and I cut the circle in paper. I work very, very slowly in very old, kind of old-fashioned ways. There wasn't any fusible. I literally stitched onto the paper to get that shape. There it is. You see a better idea of it there. And you can see that it is made of two different pieces of silk, just to get a little variation in the color. So it wasn't just one big circle of the same yellow silk. They're two different yellows.
And the reflection hits the light differently.
Silk is wonderful in that sense.
Starting to get a little bit more, well, certainly more circles.
Those circles, now it happens that this piece is a lot about circles, but I do use, again, you'll see paper. This one happens to be white. Sometimes it's black paper. It doesn't mean that the circles are going to end up like as white. What it enables me to do is create a path for the viewer's eye. I know that those are going to be points of interest that can take the viewer's eye. You'll see there's another yellow circle there too.
Black strips disappeared.
Yes, yes, they go back and forth, and I think what I do with them as well is not necessarily mean there's going to be a strip of changed color there, but it will be where there is a construction line. You know, people have different ways of working out how they construct things. I work very much in units. You know, this could sound really crazy, but quite near the beginning. I work out, and I think is where that black strip was, where the final seam is going to be. I'm not a technical person, but I kind of think, well, I'm working in units, so I'll make that unit, and I'll make that unit, and then finally, that'll be the last bit. You can see there's printed newspaper there, and the beginning of those circles. It's very symbolic for me to do that. I wanted to give the impression of being so happy. I was literally hugging myself. And that's what I feel about coming home. I love the traveling. I love the friends. I love the teaching. But oh, it's so special to come home. Those are made of printed newspaper. I just wanted to place pretty much where I was going to put them. You can see it's a kind of an extension of where those first white circles were. That movement is going up a bit. Again, I wanted the impression that I'd taken a big fat crayon and I had drawn around them, so it was hugging, but I wanted the sense of a free drawing. Cut those in black paper to get a closer idea of what that free drawing was. Okay, and the X's are also, the crossed lines are also, this is me here now.
So here is a picture of the completed quilt from a magazine, I think.
It doesn't look quite like the completed quilt behind me. That picture was taken before it was quilted. I had to have the image for the publication, which happened to be Quilt National. I was a juror, and that was an enormous privilege and very scary, because it's a responsibility. I must get this photograph done, and then I'll quilt it. But the story changed. Now, I went from here, from Durban, to Sydney, and I had the quilt and I'd been working on it, and it was pretty well complete. It was quilted. And it was one of those days, I don't know, I hit the 100-year storm. Now, I don't know how often, the 100-year storm these days seems to come more often than we like to think. And my quilt was in a plastic bag, not a zippered one, just in my bag. We got on the plane, and suddenly everything stopped, and the captain said, look, we can't go anywhere. Australian Health and Safety has taken in all the ground workers. We can't get any fuel, so we're just going to sit here for a while. And I looked out the window and I saw one of those baggage carts, and it had suitcases, bags on the top, but the plastic top, a navy blue, I'll never forget it, was flapping back and forth in this. And I looked at one of the bags and I thought, I think that's my bag. I think that's my suitcase. Got to LA and they said to me, this bag is all wet. So I said, well, then, you know, it's okay. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't dry it. Let me go on to Portland. When I got there, Jeanette and Nicholas Meyer came to meet me. We opened up the bag, and also I was staying with Hildy Morin, and everything was soaked to the point of dripping. All the colors had, not all the colors, but a lot of the colors had run, and we put it out on the table at Hildy's studio, and everybody was silent because what could we do? And a number of things went through my mind. The first was, we'll just crunch it up and throw it away. Then I thought, but they're waiting for this in Athens, Ohio. I actually considered saying, I've shipped it to you, didn't you get it? That thought didn't last for very long. I thought, no, I can't live with that. I thought, well, maybe I'll just cut it up. And then after a while of silence, I thought, stop being a wuss. What would you tell your students to do? You'd say, fix it, make a plan. So I had to make a plan. Now, I got some of Hilda's hand-dyed fabric to stitch down. The quilt as it stands now, the bit at the top, has got a whole lot of extra strips stitched onto it. And it was the value that needed to change back rather than the color. I just had to set about fixing it as best I could. I stitched and stitched and stitched. I did a lot more hand stitching. Some of the colors had changed. You can see on some of them where the colors have leaked. Often pieces end up looking not the way you thought they were going to be. This one certainly didn't.
Good story, a scary story. This is before or after the drama?
That I think it was before. The colors look pretty bright. What the Great Sydney Australian flood did was to soften all the colors. In fact, now this is quite a hard thing to admit, but I think that the softening of it helped. I think it's a better piece in the end. It's not a piece I honestly don't love this piece because I have such peculiar traumatic memories about it. So I don't love it in that sense, but it is very, very important to me.
I have this weird photo here that you sent me, but I know there's a reason for it. So would you like to tell me what it's for?
Yes. Sometimes that parts of my life environment and so on creep into my work without my necessarily realizing it. And I walked around the garden. This is just outside the garden here, and it's the new shoots of one of those subtropical, tropical monstera type. And I photographed it, and when I looked at it, and it's something I love, oh, but that's in my quilt.
Yes, yes.
And I realized that the part of the middle bit, that linear section, actually must have come from that, you know?
Yes.
Yes. So I think of myself and a lot of other people as being kind of like a sponge, you know? We take in images, you view things, and they all get kind of sponged into your brain somehow. And then that sponge gets so full that I think of it kind of leaking out of my brain, down my arm and out of my fingers.
Into your stash.
Yeah.
So here we've got a bit of detail, hand stitch and machine stitching.
Yeah, we have both sets of tools available to us. We've got machines and our hands, and whether your machine needle is there to stitch a seam, to stitch two pieces of fabric together, or whether it becomes a drawing instrument is your choice. You know, I do use both. I'm not a purist at all. Now you'll see on these raw edges here, I know people look at them, that's going to come off. No, it's not going to come off because I do a very, very tiny zigzag. You can see it.
Tiny. Yeah.
And you can choose whether you're going to do a matching thread or whether you're going to do a contrast. That's totally your choice. Yep. I like mixing hand and machine work. I think it enables a layered richness.
So I've got some blanket stitch happening there. I can see the machine stitch.
Yes.
So, yeah, it just really adds to the textural quality, doesn't it?
I like the idea of combining the two. And blanket stitch gives you, it has a little control of the edge, but it gives you a width as well.
So this next photo here struck me as a little bit strange that you sent it to me.
Why? Because again, it's a bit like the pink stems that I saw after I had made the quilt. Partly it's the color, it's those long lines, and the sense of almost a tattered edge, a not straight edge. Now, my quilts frequently have an edge that isn't straight across. I have always kind of made the assumption that I associate textiles with wrapping, and very often in rural South Africa, not in the city where people look just like me, they're dressed the same as me, but you get the sense of layering, one layer hanging over the other. And I thought, well, in a way that my response is to do the bottom of my quilt. Then I saw this banana leaf with its staggered rectangular stripped edges, and I thought, not only does that have the color I love, the stripes, it's almost as if that has been hand stitched. If you look at the lines down where the veins are, and then, oh, look at that one. That, I'm so excited to see that the other day. And I thought, that's got the layers, it's got the sense of looking in and beautiful leaf without having a straight edge. So I thought you would, and I love it. I love that piece.
I actually really like it too, and I love the light coming through it and the different.
Yes, and the light, and it was also because in this quilt I'd used a lot of the yellow, which was symbolic and joyful, but that's where the color came from as well. So that's why you got the odd little slides of banana leaves.
I was really pleased to see it. I was just a little confused, but your explanation makes total sense. And I really like the concept that you talk about of things just getting sucked into your brain and appearing at the right time. And it makes me feel not so guilty about the 20,000 photos that I have on my phone at the moment, wondering when will I ever use these inspirational photos. But there's probably little bits and pieces that will just appear one day.
And you don't know when they're going to come out. Memory is an extraordinary thing. It's kind of tucked in our heads somewhere, and suddenly one day it pops out, and out it comes out of the end of your fingers, you know.
So here we have the quilt in all its glory.
You can see on that, when you looked at the first images, the unquilted ones in the publication, that this is a much more softened and reduced color and value blending. I think the yellow brocade, there's a block of it there, is still there. You know, that hasn't changed, but a lot of the others were just softened.
Yes, so I don't have to worry so much about my pseudo straight edges actually being straight, because I can just say, Rosalie says this is okay.
You know what's important? It's got to be Lisa says this is okay.
Okay.
I like, for the most part, the top to be straight. I don't want to feel that my eyebrows are going odd when I'm looking at something. I'm happy for the sides. You've got to be quite careful about the organic edge. That they're not, you can see that it's not absolutely dead straight, and the bottom certainly was designed that way. And again it comes back to the artist's intention. If your intention is that you're making a functional bed quilt, that's not going to cut it. You know, you're not going to do that. But if you're responding to either an experience, something in your life, to a color, whatever it is that you want to respond to, this is a piece of visual art, and it doesn't have to be straight as if it's going to be put in a frame.
That was fascinating, Rosalie. I haven't had a chance to do one of your classes, and I'm always regretful when I miss the opportunity. One day it will come, and I feel like I've had a personal little class today. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. What are you doing now in this terrible time?
I've been doing some very obsessive stitching, and I find it very calming. It's very meditative. It's taken me, I think we're on day 88 or something of the lockdown, and I try to spend time, a little bit of time every day doing some of that piece.
A lot of people are doing that at the moment. It's quite fascinating how handwork has really taken off.
I think that because we have the time, and it's an automatic way to kind of draw breath. We want to be able to not panic. We want to be able to be calm, but we want to do something. We have the eyes and hands. Sorry for people who are not able, willing, or don't have any past history of doing that. I think that's really tough. I am working on some online classes. I think that will be ready quite soon. We had to stop because of the lockdown, but the Zoom lectures are fun and exciting to do. As you know, it takes a great deal of time and effort to make something look relaxed. And I mean, you can be relaxed, but to make a lecture that actually works, and that you're conscious of the fact that you can't see somebody's eyes light up,
yes,
but you know they're there. You know, I've been working slowly on my little, I say, obsessively stitched piece. The hardest thing for me is to simplify, and I know that it's a balanced act that you have to do between enriching a piece of work and actually not overdoing it.
Start another one.
Yes, you know what? I actually found a bunch of pieces, half-done pieces. I was quite shocked because I did do some bit of tidying up in my studio. Yeah, I was shocked at how many pieces I had started, and actually some of them I actually really like. So I'm going to finish up some of those. I don't believe that you have to finish every piece. Sometimes you're just doing a little experiment. Sometimes, sometimes it's done as a small piece. We need to be able to balance being able to be, I'm going to say, curious, to experiment with something new, but not always feeling that you have to finish every single piece.
I want to thank you so much for sharing your time today. You're inspiring. I'm hoping that everyone's enjoyed this little chat, and please click on the subscribe and like buttons down below, because that way I will be inspired to make more and talk to some more amazing quilters. And so, Rosalie, I would just like to say thank you, and it's just been a delight.
Thank you, Lisa. I think you're doing a great job doing this, because what I like particularly was the more in-depth, the talking about the process of one piece of work. I think that's informative, and I really appreciate that you're doing this. I usually have seen you kind of, as we rush past each other at, I don't know, in Melbourne or somewhere, and we say, hello, hello. So this was a real privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye for now.